Welcome to Soundpaint. Welcome to Super Bowl 1972. I like to ask the question sometimes, when was the last time we saw a new music instrument? In many ways, the computer is the last great music instrument to happen for quite a while. And particularly in the hardware realm, it's not that often. Sure, we'll see more synthesizers come out, more guitars, more drums, more basses. But when did we see a new instrument? One of the periods that were very active in that department was the 60s and the 70s. We saw the birth of a bunch of different keyboards and the birth of analog synthesizers as well, which we're deeply covering in Soundpaint. In the department of keyboards, mechanical keyboards or electric keyboards, there was a beautiful amount of innovation going on in the 60s and the 70s. We got the Yamaha CP70 electric piano, we got the Fender Rhodes, and we got the Wurlitzer as well. The Wurlitzer is sort of a more angry version of the Rhodes to my ears. It's more of a sort of rock and roll kind of keyboard. It's using felt hammers on reeds. And the reeds, especially the first couple of years, were a little bit unstable, so the instrument has a slightly detuned quality, which is part of its beauty as well. In the later models, this would be in the early 70s, they started refining the technology, so a lot of people that are Wurlitzer connoisseurs prefers the very early 70s. There was a couple of generations later down the line where they learned a little more. The first ones came out in 1968. So I just made a variety of patches here. A lot of you guys have requested to get more famous sort of celebrity-like patches so you can play a lot of the famous tracks made with the given instrument. So in the case of the Wurlitzer, it could be Beck, Where It's At, it could be Pink Floyd's Money, it could be Ray Charles, of course it could be Super Tramp, the Logical Song. I listened to the tracks in great depth and then rebuild them inside of Soundpaint. So if the panning is to one side or if the EQ is kind of weird, it's because it's matched to the original track. So for these famous tracks, I played them into the hardware looper only using Soundpaint instruments. So there's going to be drums and basses and strings and a variety of different things, all coming from Soundpaint. Welcome to Super Bowl. This is all about the Wurlitzer. In this case here, we got a beautiful model from 1972. All of them had 64 keys. It's just a beautiful rock sort of soulful instrument. You'll notice that all the famous tracks here are also called stars. This is a new tag that I'm going to start to use for all these sort of famous track patches, so we can always find very famous kind of patches or synthesizers just by typing in the word star up in the browser here. But let's just kick it off here with Beck, Where It's At. Such a cool, iconic song. You'll know it immediately when you hear it. And the original song does have a tad of distortion. We can add it here, but be very, very delicate with distortion. We only want a tiny, tiny bit of bite on the top here. Let's try it. Now, I took what I just played and put it inside of the looper as well. So you're going to hear the groove here. And then I added a variety of other instruments as well. First we got the drums here. They're coming from our Blackbird Aero kit. Then the Wurlitzer. And then we have this cool library called Mellow, where we sample a variety of old instruments in the style of the Mellotron. So sampled to fragile tape and all getting this sort of thin, old school kind of sound, this one here. You can hear I'm playing like an old Harman organ and some brass as well. And then a bass coming from our Jupiter 8 P bass. And then lastly, I added a little bit from our disco guitars on top of it. One of my favorite libraries for very like bubbly kind of rhythmic guitars. If you listen alone here. And this is all played in hand. I like to play it in a way so it's all off the grid. This is like my groove, if you will. It's this library here, Disco Vintage Guitars. Phenomenal library if you just want really like active kind of groove. So this next patch is maybe my favorite out of the famous ones here. You're My Best Friend by Queen. I meticulously really sat down and like really try to hit the EQ, and every single thing in here is dialed in a way like it's like, okay, this is exactly what it sounds like here. You notice how the stereo signal is completely like mono-esque? Use our stereo imagery here, particularly for vintage sounds as well. The drums is a kit from our Blackbird drummer, and then I'm also using our P bass here. Then I wanted to end a little more like kind of old school guitar, but I wanted the bends to be real. You'll often see me like move the pitch bender down here to emulate the bending, but on some of the guitar libraries, we actually sample it with like real bending. In our Thunderstick here, for example. And then added some fire brass and piano. Most of the drums back then were not super overwhelming. They were kind of like just like cool, groovy in their own way.
They have super wool. We got nothing, brah. Does it look like I have fingers that can play?
We don't need Superman. We need super wool.
Super wool, holy wool.
It's cool because they're both keyboard instruments and you can just hear they go together.
Back in my day, house, it was super wool pros and nothing but woolly super.
I never told you this, Angela.
Yeah.
But I had a fling with Super Woo while I was married to David. No, I mean Peter.
You dated Superwool? I did not. You dated Superwool.
Mom, I need the super wool, okay? Dad said if I got B+, he would consider it.
Listen, son, that's no way to talk to your mother.
We got a little bit Super Bowl action down here. And you can hear this one is panned a little bit. That's the original track. You'll notice here that I also really went in and sculpted the EQ. That's just to match the original song. They're almost one-to-one. This one here is using our dirty clap here. Just a great library if you really want to get funky and dirty. And then I also used another one here from our voice bank here. This is a specific library called Vintage Talkbox, where you can talk into this. It's often used for guitars as well, but you can talk into a box while you're playing as well. And that's the combination here. So it's a dirty clavinet and then like Vintage Talkbox combined. And combined with the Wurlitzer. And then our 2020 PRS guitar on top here. And then the P bass again. Our pick muted articulation. And then just a kit from our Blackbird drummer. We've been listening to Beck. We've been listening to Money. And now it's time for a little bit of Marvin Gaye. Such a cool track. Notice right here how I'm using the stereo imager and I'm compressing the width of the stereo signal and even moving a little bit to the side here as well. That's the original track for you. Then a little bit of disco strings too. And in context, we've got the Super Bowl here. And then I noticed in the original, they had a little bit of a Hammond organ running in the background as well. That's coming here from our 1968 harmony organ. And that vintage sound, there's just nothing that beats it. The bass here is coming from our Fender P bass. And the drums are coming from our little Weekend Vibe library here. And the strings are coming from our Disco Strings library. Isn't it amazing how this one instrument has so many different colors? If we look at the parts, it's not because it's like the most like hundreds of parts. We have two DIs, that's direct input or output of the instrument, and then we have mixed. We recorded it with a variety of different microphones. It may be that we do an expansion later down the line where we expand upon the microphones. We had 8 different vintage microphones, but for me, Soundpaint is so flexible. I can more or less kind of program my way out of it. Microphones are not as important as stuff like EQ, particularly for an instrument like this that is generally more dry. And really use the chorus a lot. The chorus is maybe like the main, together with phaser as well, effect used commonly on Wurlitzers. lot of phasing going on here. I'm modulating the rate of the phaser here. You can see here when I move the mod wheel.
Praise the Lord, for he not only saw, but also heard the warm tones of Super Wool. Amen?
Super Wool, more than just a super tool.
And just briefly to show the different raw articulations to the library, I'm just going to clean Soundpaint completely here and just load in the naked parts here, beginning here with the DI main. And then we did staccato notes as well. So if you want more percussive articulations, you'll see that in a variety of the programs. If I was to play that with the mains, it would sound like... Because the note is sustained for too long, I think we sometimes think about keyboard instruments like, well, you just need to record the sustain. It's like, yeah, not really. Versus... there's just more passage and percussiveness and accentuated attacks on the staccatos here. Now, we have the DI main. This is the driest signal of the Wurlitzer. But we also have a mixed one here using a mixture of different vintage microphones. We can hear the sound is fuller, a little more stereo-wide as well as we have them placed around the studio. One thing to notice is that this library is in our RTS format. This is our in-house audio proprietary format that allows us to morph between velocity layers. So if you notice here, I can play as dynamically as I want. With traditional sampling contact, we have these different sort of levels of sampling. We call them velocity layers. But in Soundpaint, when we use the RTS format, we're morphing between the different velocities. It's really good for keyboard instruments. Anything that has a very dynamic sort of velocity nature, you can use it a lot. I highly encourage you, if you want to get deeper into this, to go into ranks here as well and open our touch module and then set the velocity type however you want. I'm going to set it very sort of exponential right now, so we get a more soft feeling on the keyboard. I really have to click hard to let it burn through here. I'm going to show you a couple of tricks. But right now, if you're on a MIDI 2.0 controller, you get over 66,000 different velocity layers on a single key. And if you're on a traditional controller, you get 127. But that's a lot more than, you know, the 5 or 7 that any average library Omnisphere Contact will give you.
Super Wool, more than just a super tool. More than just a super tool.
I never told you this, Angela, but I had a fling with Super Wool while I was married to David. No, I mean Peter.
Better than Prince Andrew, I suppose.
Okay, so back to our famous star patches. I have another one for you. This is Steely Dan's Dirty Work. I love this track. And I played it into the looper. Goes like this. The drums coming here from our Blackbird Pulse kit. We got the bass here. That's coming again from our P bass. And for me, this is kind of like, the track is almost full here. Everything is playing hand, even the groove here, just played on the keyboard. And you can hear my groove. You know, this is not on the grid. That's one of the reasons it sounds better. Never mind the analog components. For me, this is a good example of something that just sounds live as well. This last part down here is coming from our instant guitar. I just played a little bit with the strummer, just to add a little bit of extra to it. The last famous track we got, Star Patch, here is Super Tramp's The Logical Song, which I think, you know, just coming back to it and researching this library, one of the finest songs ever written. And I cannot do justice here. You have to hear it with the real singer. It's a beautiful, beautiful track. I really try to dial in this patch so it's as close to the real deal as possible. Now, I played that into the looper and I added a few more things just to beefen it up and, you know, not try to do the same thing as the original track because it's so perfect the way it is. So the sound's a little bit bigger here. And then it has this beautiful other part. And for this one here, I used this patch here, and then I added Vivaldi's harpsichord on top. I just thought they belong so well together. A lot of tracks, also in the 60s, the Beatles did as well, we're using harpsichords on top of conventional instruments. I think we're gonna see more of that. Just like it just add extra pizzazz. That's Super Wool for you.